Okay. Hello and welcome to the Great Wave Podcast. This is episode one. I'm here with our first guest, Deb JJ Lee.
Hello.
Yeah, would you like to introduce yourself, talk about what you do, who you are, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So hi, I am a Korean-based illustrator based in what no, I messed this up. I'm a Korean American illustrator based in Brooklyn, New York. I have been a freelance illustrator since 2020, which was intentional actually, and I haven't looked back into working a full-time job ever since. I'm very lucky to not have to work a full-time job right now. A lot of my work tends to go into not editorial anymore, but freelance, like commercial
Mhm.
illustration or publishing. So commercial illustration being like any illustration you do for like advertising, marketing, like any brands that would reach out and be like, hey, we want an illustration for I don't know, like this campaign we're doing for like Pride or something something. And I
Yeah.
also do illustration for publishing, which would mean anything between book covers, book cover illustrations to literally writing and illustrating my own picture book or graphic novel. One of which being in Limbo, which published in March of this year, and it has been quite a ride. It is in Limbo is a memoir about growing up in suburban New Jersey in high school, and it deals a lot with like identity, mental illness, and just like relationships. I think that's the biggest part. It's not necessarily about Korean
Mhm.
diaspora, which it does highlight, but it's more about like, okay, well, I'm growing up and
Yeah.
but I happen to be Korean as well. And the Korean part is a story, but it's not the story, if that makes any sense.
Speaking of you working as a freelance artist, I kind of looked through your social media, your Twitter, your TikTok. You talked about how Epic Games, the
Yeah.
company that owns Fortnite,
hmm
approached you to for you to do a design for them. Could you tell me about that?
Sure. So, I'm not a Fortnite player. I tried playing Fortnite once and I wasn't
Hmm.
good at it, so I quit. Yeah, that's how I do things now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I think this was November of last year, so 2022. Fortnite has a series of illustrations that they commission for their loading screens. So I think it's something where if something is loading, you would see like a custom illustration
Ah.
by a freelance illustrator. So they wanted me to do one of those for a specific character, and I was like, okay, wow, I did not expect my career to like suddenly draw for Fortnite now. But when I pressed about, well, okay, what is like the licensing? Like, are you going to own the illustration or are you going to use
Yeah.
this illustration once? Also, Fortnite, they have like billions of dollars. They're like, yeah, no, we'll pay you 3,000 for like to own all the copyright. And
Mm.
my agent and I, who is the person who like helps me negotiate and do all the logistics for contracts and everything with these clients kind of just like looked at each other and was like, what? Excuse me, because hello, you're Fortnite and you want a full buyout, which buyout is I think most of what makes an illustrator money actually, or copyright or
Mm.
licensing. That is not about like how long it takes for you to make an illustration. It's like how will your client use the illustration? Okay,
Interesting.
so let's say Fortnite was like, okay, we're gonna use this illustration once, maybe like we'll use this for like a month in the game, and you get to sell prints, you get to put this on your portfolio, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can even sell it to other companies if you want. Then fine, like $3,000 makes sense.
Uh-huh.
But seeing that they wanted a copyright buyout, that would mean I'm not allowed to make prints. I have to ask permission to put it on my website, which they did say I could, to their credit.
Hmm.
Um, but that also means that if they wanted, like they could make infinite money off of the illustration, which means that this could live on t-shirts. It could live only as a
Oh,
loading screen if they
wow.
wanted to use that. They could also use it as a billboard in Times Square if they really felt inclined to do that. So what you're paying for, like that, the minimum, the absolute minimum for what a copyright buyout should be, um, in industry standard, it's the $15,000, like $15,000,
Yes.
um, which is pretty low
Mhm.
actually, for a place like Fortnite. I would expect like a place from Fortnite to. Some people said $100,000 for a full copyright buyout, considering that they are one of the most like highest grossing like
Mhm.
online game or something. But I was asking for like $15,000, which is fine. There's so much money in Fortnite, and they said like, "Oh no, sorry. We actually like don't like that's not in our budget or whatever. Also,
Oh.
we don't have enough lawyers to negotiate the contract, so like you can sell prints, or we can only use this for like this specific use." So they're paying for the possibilities of being able to use it for whatever they want, but
Mhm.
they claim that, yeah, like we don't have enough legal manpower, which come on, like bullshit. Yeah, it's because they're all busy working on like the child exploitation cases that they're being sued for. Am I right?
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so I was like, all right, well, unfortunately, I don't think this will work because I don't know, like y'all are Fortnite, and I'm at a point in my career where I don't need Fortnite to elevate my
Mhm.
work. So I turned on the job and yeah, like kind of went about my day, my week, my month. And then the next
Yeah.
month, and I think this is when more people hear about it, is that a friend of mine, Rebecca Mock. Actually, I was just at a pool party with them the other day,
Oh,
like literally
cool.
last night. But they posted like a page from what's called the ethical 2001 edition of like ethical guidelines for graphic artists,
Mhm.
and it basically said that it was lamenting over how in this was 2001, so like over 20 years ago, where in
Yeah.
1936, I believe, like an illustrator would possibly make like $2,000 off of like an illustration for commercial, like for
Mm.
advertising. And it pretty much has not gone up since. And that $2,000 is enough to buy a house in
Mhm.
1936.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and if you follow with inflation, like that should be around $40,000 for a copyright buyout, which is how it should be.
Mhm.
Like that sounds right to me.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just funny that it hasn't really gone up. Like Fortnite offered only $3,000, which is an insult actually. And
Mhm.
so I kind of like laughed about it a little, like sadly, and then put it on Twitter about, yeah, isn't it kind of funny like Fortnite, who had made $6 billion last year, only wanted to do like 3,000 for an illustration buyout. And
Mhm.
at first it circulated around my group, my circles, where a lot of us are professional commercial illustrators. So everyone was like, yo, like this is messed up, like that's like that they shouldn't have done that. And then it started getting around to like the masses of Twitter. So like
Mhm.
it just got to like the general public, who they see, it's clear that they see illustration and art as a hobby, nothing more than that. They also don't
Yeah.
seem to understand the idea of what copyright means and how much $1 billion really is.
Mhm.
So I got called greedy. I got called like
Wow.
it was just like, and people were like, "Oh, you should negotiate it," and I said like, "I did, I really did negotiate. Like, here's."
They didn't want to.
They didn't want to negotiate, and they were like, the legal people were just busy or non-existent, allegedly.
Mhm.
Um, so that went super viral. I actually think that's actually how the AI stuff started later, because I found out a week
Ooh.
later that like someone took my work and made it into an AI model, and that's a whole different story. But I think
Mhm.
it was from Fortnite, which that happened, and they're pretty close. I think they're weirdly very close in they are much the topics are much more related than I think it seems on the surface. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
Kotaku did a story about it, and it went viral even more after that. And like I honestly, I mean, it was like, I mean, a lot of people, especially even professional artists, most people were really like, yeah, like good on you for standing up to a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Yeah.
Um, like you're doing great, like we support you, thank you for bringing this to people's attention. But then there were also other professional artists who are pillars of the industry, who were privately to their very powerful friends being like, don't do what this person did. Like their
Wow,
reputation is
really?
ruined now, their career is ruined, and
Clearly not.
you're gonna be on blacklisted for everything. And I mean, actually, like the opposite happened. I think that's actually
Yeah.
how more and more people learned about my work, and I got hired more and more after that. So sorry, I guess. But yeah, so it was all like, I mean, it was stressful. Like it was very weird to be like the main character of our Twitter for like a few days. Um,
Yeah.
but I think when it started to feel really, really bad is when like illustrators that I've looked up to for years were privately like posting on their Facebooks. Like I saw, like I don't think they realized
Oh.
that we have a lot more mutual friends than they thought.
Mhm.
Like they probably thought it was some kind of like, rando, but really
Mhm.
I like, hey, we have a lot of friends in common. Like we are in the same circles. Like be
Mhm.
careful. Um
Oh.
yeah, so that's when it started feeling really bad. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean some
I mean,
yeah, it just felt really bad.
do you think that they thought that the $3,000 would be okay because it would have given you publicity?
Some people did. There were a few. There was like one professional artist that I will not name, who I think has been getting pretty big recently. Again, has
Mhm.
been was like, well, I would have taken $3,000. Like, yeah, because you work for Marvel, who pays you nothing,
Ooh.
and yeah, of course. And then someone else, yeah. So it was that. But the other person that I'm thinking about, who like they will be in illustration textbooks, like they are like a legacy illustrator, they've been in the industry for decades.
Mhm.
But they were saying something like, don't ever do this, and it was really obvious that they did not read the article. Like it was so
Uh-huh.
obvious. Like they said something like, this was in their private Facebook profiles, but turns out we have a lot of mutual friends, so people screenshotted it and sent it to me like, dude, look at what this
Ooh.
person is saying about you. But
Mm.
they said like, don't ever call out an art director like this. And if you look at the article, I never called out anyone specifically. I never
Mhm.
shared names. I don't even remember what
Mhm.
the person's name was at this point. Like I can't remember. Um, but it was really clear that like, and they claimed that I was being rude to them because I sent them an email like months before, because they've also worked on a Fortnite project with the same assignment, but they were telling me
Oh.
over email that they were willing to break NDA, which is more problematic, I think. But they
Ooh.
claimed that I was being rude. But if you look at the emails that I actually sent, it was just like introducing myself, telling them about my concerns about how much they were paying, and asking if they got paid the same way. And they said like,
Um,
"Oh, Deb was being rude." You're like, they were being so
mm,
rude. And when you don't
what a
post the
betrayal.
screenshots of the email, like people are gonna take your word for it. So it was just really irresponsible. And I actually emailed the person and be like, "Yo, no, like you were the bad one. I didn't do anything wrong." And
Yeah.
they basically sent like paragraphs and paragraphs, like a whole essay, like two essays about, it was like word salad. It was a non-apologetic essay, and I just like
Mhm.
responded with like two words, and it was just, yeah.
I mean,
Um
like, since then, you've done so many cool projects, like, you did a poster for Everything Everywhere All at Once, um,
hmm,
which was so beautiful, it was so cool,
it's literally like fan art. So there is a, I know, I think like that poster got ridiculously viral.
It's so
Um
pretty.
that I think like some people are like thinking that it was an official poster, but it's not.
Uh-huh.
I really
Oh.
wish. Yeah. Because there's that one. There's a James Jean poster that is the really like crazy like illustrated one.
Mhm.
That I think the other people were talking about, but
Mm,
that was the official poster. But yeah. I mean, so there's a if you there's like a group of people, a community of people with lots of disposable income who they have like these private Facebook groups, and they would like all crowdfund. Like this is it's similar to Mondo,
uh-huh.
um, but it's similar to Mondo, but it's like more grassroots.
Mhm.
Basically you have all these people who are like, yeah, like we want to commission this artist to draw a fan poster of this. So they're trying to make like collect like screen limited edition like screen print posters of like alternate movie posters, or posters of like their favorite series or whatever.
Oh, cool.
So someone was like, okay, I think Deb would be a really good person to do like an alternate everything ever all at once poster. So I did that, and they would screen print it. I would get like 12 or 13 um, artist copies. So that
Mhm.
would be like 24 by 36 posters that are screen printed, and there's only 15 of them. But luckily, they they realized that, oh, this poster got really big.
Mhm.
um, so I was able to negotiate with the person who commissioned me of like letting me sell like smaller versions that are not screen printed at
Mhm.
like conventions. So I'm not allowed to sell them
Yeah.
online, but I can sell them in person. Because the whole point of these communities is that they're looking for they're like collectors.
Oh,
They're like collectibles is what they're looking for. So
that's
it's
fair. So it's like a
yeah,
special version that
a
only they
special
can have.
version. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well,
So
that's
yeah, these people have a lot of money to just drop on like illustrators who, yeah, so it's all crowdfunded basically. The
mhm.
only the which is fun, but until you cannot make any prints of it after. So you can't make more
Mhm.
money off of it, which sucks. So
Yeah.
that's my one gripe with it, but I think I'm able to negotiate with like future uh commissioners about like, hey, like just let me sell like Gicley, I don't know how to pronounce it, but like
Mhm.
GICLEE, like prints of it, like um in like conventions or festivals or whatever. So,
Right.
but like everything Ever All at Once poster was a very it was a very special case because it got so big. But the cool
Yeah.
thing is that the Daniels retweeted it a few
Oh,
times.
wow,
They
that's so
commented, they're like,
cool.
"Wow, this is amazing," and they retweeted it. They retweeted the work in progress version. They retweeted the final one, and so that was like really nuts. It
Wow,
was really
that's
cool.
so cool. Yeah. Well, you've also done, I guess you didn't do an official one for Everything Everywhere All at Once, but you've done posters for Japanese Breakfast, which is a
Mhm.
huge band.
Yeah,
Um,
no, they're great.
you've done, like, things for McDonald's,
Mhm.
BMW.
Yep.
Over, like, the past few years of being a freelance artist, how have you kind of learned to market yourself, getting the pay that you deserve, things like that, so you can work with these big brands while also getting the value that you as an artist deserve?
Yeah, I think it's also understanding that if you're an illustrator, a freelance illustrator, like you're the only like for a while, like you will be the only one who's able to advocate for yourself. And it's also remembering that if these people are reaching out to you, like they're reaching out to you for a reason. Like you're not like they're
Mm,
reaching out to you because they're serious about you and
mhm,
they see value in you, and you have to reflect that with whatever you come back to with them to them. So I mean, I'm lucky enough that I haven't needed to self promote in a few years. Like I haven't
mhm,
had to like send any emails, like cold emails to art directors asking for jobs. Um, I think I'm just like on a wave right now where it's just kind of coming to me.
mhm,
Um, so when that happens, like I got an illustration agent around September, which is different from a literary agent. So
yeah,
work with illustration agents work with like if you have a literary agent prior to getting an illustration agent, they'll handle everything that's not book related. um
okay.
so my agency, they've been in the industry for like since the 80s, I think, so like
Oh, wow.
over almost like 50 years. So they're very aware of how commercial illustration works, how commercial illustrations work, and they are very good at advocating for me. And like, it's like it's a good way for
Yeah.
me to be told that, I'm not the crazy one for asking this much.
Mm,
um so they're an expert in that, so I'm really thankful that I have them. Granted, the standard for um their cut of payment is like 30% of your check.
oh,
But the thing is,
yeah.
I don't know, have you done taxes
No.
before? Okay,
No.
so okay, so the way that it works is that if you are a this is really important, and I don't think people understand this enough, but
Uh-huh.
if you're a freelancer, like it's different. Okay, all right. So if you work a full-time job and you get the actual check, your paycheck in the mail, you'll notice that 30% of it is gone. And the
Mhm.
reason for that is that they're withholding the money that you can spend on your own, because that those are your taxes that they take
Uh-huh.
away. Okay? So, if you're a freelancer, they're giving you the entire thing. They're not withholding anything for taxes. So,
Um,
it looks like you're getting a lot more money than somebody who works in corporate who would be making the same amount. But
mhm.
then you have to give that 30%, those taxes, to the IRS whenever tax season comes along.
So you have to do it yourself.
You have to do it yourself. So it's always
Oh,
important
okay.
to like hold on to at least 30% of your income. Like, don't touch it, because you have to give it to the IRS like in April.
Mm,
But what you can do is that you can do business expenses, which means that you can, let's say, like I work on my iPad most of the time, because
mhm.
I need my iPad to do a job. I hold on, I like expense that. So I say like, hey, I spent this amount of money on my iPad. It's an expense for me to keep the business running. So
Right.
therefore, I'm allowed to deduct it from how much taxes I actually owe to the government.
Mm, mhm.
Does that make sense?
No, 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 yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So what I can also do is that if I can also flip the narrative and say that I am paying my agents 30% of my income. So then I can deduct that from my taxes. So when April comes, I actually pay the IRS less than I have to.
Oh,
So let's say like
yeah.
if I owe the IRS like I don't know, like $10,000,
Mhm.
but by the end of the year, but I say, "Hey, I actually paid my agent $3,000 and this is important for me because they help my business run." Then I don't owe the IRS $10,000. I only owe them 7,000.
7,000.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
No,
that
yeah,
you
I
can like
understand.
yeah, so it's like okay, like I understand that paying your agents is a lot of money,
Mhm.
but you can also take that away from your taxes cuz it's a business expense.
Right,
Same with
okay.
buying books or buying movies or going to movies, is that I can deduct that from my taxes because it's
Mhm.
a research. I'm learning about storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I'm a storyteller. I write books, which is fun because I when I do buy even like novels, like not even just comics, like it's storytelling, so I can deduct that from my taxes as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
That makes
IRS lessons from me
yeah.
today.
For freelance artists, always spend your money. So,
Yeah.
I do wanna ask,
Mhm.
you brought up NFTs before. Um, as a digital artist, you say you do most of your work on your iPad. I think you use Procreate, correct?
Yeah.
So, as a digital artist, can you share your thoughts on NFTs and AI art?
Sure. So, I mean, NFTs, I feel like they've died pretty hard. So I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know, NFTs are just like it just doesn't make any sense to me. I
Mhm.
mean, first of all, the whole idea of crypto and web3 and I don't know, like I think the intent of a decentralized internet makes sense. Like I understand the appeal in that. Like same with like crypto, like a decentralized bank. That makes
Mhm.
sense. But I
Mhm.
think the way that you got to use like more in the blockchain, like you got to use more and more computer power, you got to like have computers solve harder and harder math problems in order to
Mhm.
get that running. It's just like we are basically doing a death spiral in climate change, right? Like things are
Right.
just like we're making things a lot worse and they don't have to be this bad. So it's an environmental thing too.
Mhm.
Also the idea that NFTs are like art is being used as currency feels kind of weird to me. Doesn't feel right. It's also a very an unregulated market, like crypto in general, which is basically what NFTs are. It's just like crypto in a picture.
Yeah.
Um, like the way that NFTs are very uh like I don't know, like crypto is very unregulated. Like you can use it. A lot of people use it to buy like really like things that you should not buy,
Mhm.
like underage child exploitation and like sex work. Like that's another thing
Mhm.
that a lot of people use crypto for. So it's just like it's just uncomfortable, and I think it's just making the wealth gap like bigger and bigger.
Mm.
like a lot of people in New York don't have bank accounts.
Mhm.
So why are we like jumping to something that's even more advanced, and it takes it like the information divide is getting bigger and bigger. Um it's also that like NFTs are like, I know people argue that NFTs are like a way for artists to make money, but
Mhm.
it's the upfront payments of how much NFTs cost to just make. Like
Yeah.
you have to have a lot of money in order to drop that.
Oh.
So it's not really a good way to make money. You're losing a lot more money. Like, the profit is a lot smaller if you make any profit at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I think just like the way that NFTs are used, like I mean, a lot of like people that I've seen have their has had their work like stolen and made into
Mm.
NFTs, which like is really awful and disappointing. So that's doing there's a lot of NFT scams. It's just like a bad market. It's just bad.
Yeah.
Also, I think the people who are interested in NFTs are just like, I just really question their
Mhm.
intent and their tastes. Like I don't really want my illustration to be owned by like some tech bro who just wants to make money.
Right.
I don't know. It feels like, I don't know, maybe it's not the same thing at all, but it feels really similar to um I mean, like, no shade to anybody who has said this to me in the past, because like I always feel really weird when people buy like one of my prints, like friends like in real life, like in college, would buy my prints and be like, "Oh, I can't wait to sell this in like 50 years and it'll be worth a lot of money." And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, "Okay, I know you're trying to say something
Mm.
really nice, but like I
Like using your
that
art as an investment.
yeah, like I mean, sure, I guess that's what people do, but it feels, I don't know, I feel kind of grossed out by that. It kind of gives
Mhm.
me an ick.
Mhm.
Um so yeah, I really really don't love that when people do that. Yeah, so that's NFTs. AI art. I oh my god, I talk about AI art all the time now.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know. Like I think I already lamented over this like a few minutes ago, but
Mhm. Right.
NFT or AI art is like something that I am personally affected by, like directly, where someone on Reddit made an AI model off of my work without
Yeah.
asking me, or will not give me credit, like actively refused to give me credit, like in the comments.
Wow.
And it wasn't until someone like, I mean, a lot of people assumed that it was this one specific artist,
Mhm.
and the guy, the OP was like, "Oh, sure, yeah, yeah, yeah," and then he released the model under that
Mm.
artist's name. But it
The
wasn't the
cover.
artist; it was me. And then
Wow.
someone eventually like put my name in there, and like he deleted everything.
Oh,
So
wow.
if that doesn't really prove that it was obviously me, then I don't know what is. I mean,
And
AI
you have a
art
very
is.
distinct art style too, so
Thank you. Think I really appreciate that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it was like, damn, like this really sucks. I mean, the problem with AI art is there's two. I like to divide it into like two reasons that AI art like sucks. The
Uh-huh.
first reason is that AI art is, I would say I'll give one reason that's a little bit more philosophical, and another reason that's more like about the labor market. So the
Mhm.
philosophical reason that AI art sucks is that we're solving a problem that doesn't exist. Like,
Right.
why do we have cave art? Like people did cave drawings because it made them feel good, or they were just expressing what they were seeing.
Mhm.
Um we also have art therapy because drawing makes us feel good, and it's a way to like relieve like stress, your anxiety, your trauma. That's how people do it. Like that's why people are musicians, that's why people are artists, because it makes them feel good. um
Yeah.
so to have AI art be something where you're skipping, like people like to draw for the process. Like sure, the results are nice, but like the act of drawing something is really cathartic.
Mhm.
So when a bunch of artists who are obvious, well, no, they're not artists, they don't know what it's like. When a bunch
Mhm.
of those people just take that and remove the process from it, and you're going straight to the result, it's a bit insulting. um
Yeah.
because you're ignoring like,
It, like, reduces it to just the product.
it reduces it to the product, it reduces it to the, like just the result too, which so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's kind of why that sucks.
So I completely agree with you there. The last thing I do want to talk about is your book in
Oh,
Limbo.
yeah.
I was able to I was able to get in Limbo, and
Oh, good.
I read it in like one night. It was so
Oh,
good.
shoot. Wow, thanks.
Yeah, in Limbo, if you haven't read In Limbo is Deb's book.
Okay.
It's about their childhood growing up as a Korean American. Um, it's about their family relationships, kind of how they spend time at school. Where did you get the inspiration to start working on a graphic memoir?
It was actually through a comic that I made in 2018 about like just like not having a really good having like a language barrier between me and my grandparents because they don't speak English and I don't really speak Korean that well.
Mhm,
And then I put it on Twitter and it got like pretty viral because Japanese Breakfast retweeted it and this was before I
mhm.
really knew her. That's how like she got to know my work and that's how I
Oh,
started doing
wow.
posters for her. Anyway, yeah, and then my literary agent who I had for like a few months at the time was like, "Oh, like I didn't know you like to make comics." And to be honest, I didn't either. Like 4 pages was like the biggest comic I've ever made at the time and to me that
Yeah.
felt like giant. So
Mhm.
then we talked about the idea of like, like do you want to work on a book? Like do you want to work on a graphic novel? And we are
Wow.
like, "Sure." And then that's how it started.
Oh, cool.
um yeah, so it was very serendipitous. Very very serendipitous and it was yeah, it was an accident. I kind of tripped into a graphic memoir, really. But I
Yeah.
think a graphic memoir or like some kind of like object that I can archive like a section of my life was something I've always wanted to make for many years. And I think it
Mhm.
was just a good time to do that. And what a time that was, just
Mhm.
spending years on drawing like one thing. It was a lot. Yeah, that was a big thing.
How was it to you talk about a lot of, a lot of the trauma that you went through, the mental health issues,
Mhm.
and, how is that process documenting that in, I'm sure it was a painstaking process. How was that feel?
Oh, I mean, it was very I mean, at first, like, I was putting a bunch of memories in chronological order,
Mhm.
and I was actually mixing a bunch of information that, I had to kind of not like make up, but
Mhm.
remember that something like this happened and it left me feeling this way. Um, it left me feeling this way, but so I have to like, recreate a conversation, but it was probably different than what actually happened.
Mhm.
Um, and similarly, like there were also journal entries that I found from high school that I just like rewrote that I basically put into the book, like because I would write those journal entries um, right after they happened. And then
Mhm.
I was able to like, okay, well, my memory was very fresh when that happened, and now I don't have to make it up. Like I like the very very pivotal moments in the book are
Mhm.
exactly like I think page for like shot to shot how it actually happened in real life.
Wow. Wow.
Um so yeah, that's kind of how that went for me. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of those events, I think like the events that were revolving around my parents, it didn't really take that much effort to parse through and like write down because I've already been to therapy. Like I had to talk about it with so many different therapists about everything
Mhm.
that happened that it just felt like another day.
Yeah.
um and like it was just like another day for me.
Mhm.
um so it wasn't that traumatizing to redo everything because I'm like, oh yeah, well I know this
Right.
happened, so it's nice to just like I feel like I rewrote those scenes over and over and over again, like before I was actually
Mhm.
writing the graphic novel because I was retelling it to people. So it's just like the graphic novel was just like, okay, well, like let's culminate everything that I said to therapists and friends, and let's just like make that into a comic. And it was pretty easy. It didn't seem that it wasn't that difficult. Um, but I think the things that I'm still kind of parsing through in my head are the um like relationships with people in my high school. I still feel like
Mm.
I have a little weird I had a little weird like relationship with
Uh-huh.
some kids in my high school that I feel like I still need to reflect on even today.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of speaking of your high school, I think
Mhm.
you really accurately describe how it is to kind of not fit in,
Mhm.
especially as like an Asian American. That's something I can relate to,
Yeah.
where like you don't really fit in with people who are like your family, but you also don't really fit in with like white Americans, and then you also don't fit in with other Asian Americans. It's kind of like finding your place. I found that to be a really compelling part of the story. Um,
That means a lot. Like are you like did I like you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like are you in high school right now?
yeah, I am in high school right now.
Okay, so the way that you said that it's accurate, like thank you for that validation because I'm like I know I'm a lot I know I haven't been in high school for many
Mhm.
years and to realize that to know that it like still fits like is
Oh
really
yeah.
important to me.
How do you think it might have changed? How do you think your high school experience would have changed if you were surrounded by people who kind of understood what you were going through, who also kind of found in between?
I mean, I think it would have made my life a little bit it would still kind of suck, but it would suck a little
Mhm.
less or it
Mhm.
might suck in different ways. I mean, like to have friends who don't really understand like this is how my parents are and this is how my mom communicates with me it was hard because I don't know like it just I just felt really like alone like I felt like I was
Mhm.
gaslighting myself all the time
Yeah.
because they're like no like why would your parents do that like what is like and they were it felt like that was kind of being blamed on me sometimes and I'm just like I
Mhm.
don't know like I sorry like that's just how they are and
Mhm.
yeah, I think my life would have been significantly easier. I mean, it also depends on what kinds of Asians, right? Like, I think I was surrounded by Koreans in my Korean school, but they were
Mhm.
the sort of Koreans that are surrounded by Koreans all the time, or they are
Mm.
very evangelical Koreans. And that's a whole other, like, toxic community that is for
Yeah.
another day.
Mhm.
Um, like, I think there's a lot of nuance of, like, I would face different challenges if I
Mhm.
had more people around me who were also Asian American.
Mhm.
Um, I felt less of that. I mean, I went to a college after high school that was more that was much more had a higher Asian population. So
Mhm.
I felt a little bit more at home when I was at that school. Um, so that was like I think that would have been my ideal. Like if I went to a school that had like a similar demographic as my college, like that would have been like my whole life instead of just like for 4 years that would have been more ideal I think because
Yeah.
my high school was extremely Caucasian.
Mhm.
There was only one other Korean person in my grade and two other people I know who are from like the Bay Area or who are from like the Korean part of New Jersey. It's like that's like unheard of. Like what? You were the
Yeah.
only one? Like what do you
Mhm.
mean? And to them it's like there were so many Koreans at my school and it's like I I
Mhm.
bet.
Yeah. No, yeah, I completely understand. How were
Mhm.
your parents when it came to mental health and like accepting that you had mental health difficulties?
I mean, it's a very like hush hush thing. It's like my mom was definitely ashamed of it.
Mhm.
She's like, she seems like what I was going through was like she would I think for lack of a her vocabulary and mental illness was so limited that
Mhm.
she would look at me and she would just call me a psycho.
Mhm.
She would call me like she would I felt like she didn't normalize anything that I went through, which I
Mhm.
sure like I understand. I think what I mean to say is that like, oh, like it's this happens and it's okay. Like, she was just like, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
you know, which like yeah, I guess I'm depressed, like
Mhm.
so are many high schoolers, but she was very like, yeah, like this is not like something's really up and this is bad. I don't know. I mean, I also had even my friends in high school, like mental health is not a thing that they really understood. Like
Mhm.
most of them did not understand it. Like I don't think I really understood it that well either myself.
Mhm.
Um one of the characters in the book, Kate, who's like my white friend, one of my
Mhm.
white friends, I guess,
Mhm.
the good one. Um I mean, she was going through some like in real life, like she was going through some really awful like mental health stuff.
Mhm.
And like me, and I just didn't really pay attention to that.
Mhm.
I was just like, what's wrong with you? Like, why aren't you at school anymore? Like, you're always absent and like you're falling behind. Like, that's not my fault. You know, and you're like I can't help you, that stuff. Like,
Mhm.
so I really didn't understand it that well. I mean, granted, this was also like 2011, so this was like 12 years ago. So
Yeah.
mental health was not a very spoken about topic. Like they
Mhm.
were just like, something's wrong with you if you're depressed. Like we're gonna avoid you when you're depressed. Like we don't know what
Yeah.
to do with you.
Yeah. Um, how did you kind of get to the place where you became more understanding, or like with your mental health, you kind of understood it more, understood that it wasn't a bad thing?
I wouldn't say I probably like after college actually like when I was working on the book, I think is when I fully understood it. Or understood it more at least. Um I mean
Mhm.
because when I was working on the book, my perspective on how it all played out in high school is completely different than how I landed when the book finished. You know,
Mhm.
when I finished the book, um at first it felt like, well, when I started working on the book, it felt like, I like to describe it, it felt like a giant call out post to like everyone who has done me wrong, or like,
Mm.
this sucks, like how dare you let this happen to me, like I'm like this because of you. It felt like I was really like sad. Like I mean
Mhm.
it felt like I was just like moaning and groaning the whole time. And like I
Mm.
mean by the end of the book, I realized, like as I was working on it, I realized that like, you know, like yeah, sure, like the circumstances weren't great, but a lot of it has to do with how do I process everything that's happening? How do I cope with it more healthfully?
Mhm.
Um so I think I understood that like there's a lot of like accountability that I had to take on as
Mhm.
I worked on the book. So I would say like my understanding of mental health didn't really kick in until probably like, I don't know, while I was working on the book. So let's say like 2019, 2020-ish.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
totally makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Your book is kind of one of the, the first that I've seen or heard about, Asian American youth and mental health and kind of combating both of those. So, how do you feel about like how you might be able to create representation for like young Asian American people, young Korean American people who are going through similar struggles and going through similar mental health crises?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think like it's not just that, but it all, because I think like, I mean, ideally, I would like to move from situations that are like, move from working on stuff where it's all about their trauma as an Asian American. It's all about their trauma of their parents. Like, I would like to make more texts or more stories that isn't about that, but like, oh, like the character
Mhm.
just happened to be this.
Mhm.
You know, they just happen to be like Asian American, and like I
Mhm.
don't know, like
Where
I'm
that
thinking
is an
about,
essential part of their
it's
identity.
not the essential it's not essential, like it's not the story, but it's a part of this. It might be a part of their story, but it's just like, no, they're just Korean. That's it.
Mhm.
Like there's probably some stuff in the book that, there's some stuff like in their story that might be like, oh no, this is like, only this would only happen to a Korean person, but this is not what the entire book is about.
Mm.
The
So
entire
it's
book is
like
like sci-fi or it's fantasy, and it's just like, no, they're just Korean.
so it's just
Um
like part of their character, not what their
Part of their
character
character. I mean,
is.
it's a little bit like Miles Morales in Spider-Verse, where it's like, it's not a, I think what I like about Spider-Verse and his character that they made is like, it's not about like his immigrant background. Like it's not about his mom being from Puerto Rico. It's not about his like dad who is a black police officer, but it's more like
Mhm.
there's no trauma in that really, or like as far as we can see. But it's just he just happens to be
Mhm.
who he is. He
It's
just
just something
happens.
that we see. It's not some everything that we see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like you can't change Miles Morales's like ethnicity,
Mhm.
but like it's not about his ethnicity.
The one final thought I want to ask you is: are there any like large projects or anything that you're working in the future that you want to talk about per se?
Sure. So I have a graphic novel with HarperCollins that's coming out next fall. It is called I am illustrating it. I'm not the author, but it's about
Mhm.
escaping North Korea. It's called The Other Side of Tomorrow, which is coming out. I think I already said like next September so far.
Mhm.
But I'm wrapping it up in the next few months, and yeah, I hope it goes okay. But it's been quite a I don't know. It's been a process just doing
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No, yeah. That
yeah,
sounds super interested. I'm excited to see that.
yeah. Thank you. I'm excited too.
Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast, Deb.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
what are your social media?
Oh, my social media is I pronounce it like J Debbie L, but it's JDEBBIEL. It was a username that I came up in
Mhm.
2012 for Tumblr because I couldn't think of other usernames that were not taken. I actually yeah, so I just go by Deb. Friends call me JoJo. It's just a thing I started recently.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say that was like you can find me everywhere through that handle.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, thank you again very much for this interview.
thank you.
Um, and have a good day.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.